Kenya's Chief Justice says the Supreme Court is unable to hear a petition calling for a delay in Thursday's presidential rerun. A Niger government official reveals why a U.S. soldier's body remained on the battlefield longer than 3 other American troops killed in an ambush attack. And an entrepreneur takes his mobile cinema to a South African township. Africa 54 starts right now.
Good evening, I'm Esther Gidhu. You at Info Vincent Makori, who will join us shortly from Nairobi. This is Africa 54. Kenya plunged deeper into a political crisis on Wednesday after its Supreme Court said it could not hear a case to delay the presidential election rerun because it lacked the judges to make a quorum. Only the Supreme Court has the authority to delay Thursday's poll. Preparations for the vote have been marred by administrative confusion and a wave of protests and violence. Kenya's Chief Justice David Maraga explains.
Following the events of last night, which are in the public domain, the Honorable the Deputy Chief Justice and the Deputy President of the court is not in a position to come to court. The Honorable Justice Ibrahim is unwell and is out of the country for treatment. The Honorable Justices Ojwang and Wanjara are not able to come to court. The Honorable Justice Njoki Ndung'u is out of Nairobi and has been able to get a flight back to Nairobi in time for the hearing of this matter. That leaves Justice Lenaola and I as the only judges present. As the two of us cannot form a quorum under Article 163(2) of the Constitution, this matter cannot therefore be heard this morning. It's accordingly adjourned to a date to be taken in the registry.
Maraga's announcement appears to clear the way for Thursday's rerun of the presidential elections to proceed. Dozens of women in white scarves marched through Nairobi Wednesday to show their support for the election. Leading up to the vote, there have been repeated clashes between police and protesters, prompting authorities to ban demonstrations in Kenya's largest cities last week. The Supreme Court threw out the results of the August 8th election because of what it called irregularities and illegalities. Opposition leader Raila Odinga, who withdrew his candidacy from the repeat poll, is calling on his supporters to protest what they perceive are ongoing problems with the Election Commission.
We have said that there will be no elections on the 26th of October. What will happen will be a Jubilee, PR, and opinion poll, not an election in the Republic of Kenya. Election will be held when the conditions are favorable for free and fair elections.
Meanwhile, Kenya's President Uhuru Kenyatta is assuring supporters there will be enough security at the polls to protect them while they cast their ballots. Joining us live via Skype to put all this information into perspective is Africa 54 Managing Editor Vincent Makori. Good evening, Vincent. Bring us up to speed with the latest, given there are so many new developments in Nairobi today.
Good evening, Esther. Indeed, so many things happening at a breakneck speed here in Kenya. It's even just a few hours before the scheduled poll. And now, this is what is taking place today in Kenya. You already mentioned the Supreme Court's inability to make a ruling on a case that was meant to stop the vote from taking place tomorrow. So that is very significant. What that means is the vote goes ahead as planned. In fact, the Electoral Commission Chairman, Wafula Chebukati, later on in the day said the elections will go on as planned. They have made the necessary arrangements and they've been assured of security at the polling stations. So the elections are on. But then you remember that throughout the week we've been talking about Mr. Raila Odinga, the leader of the opposition NASA coalition, was to make a very, very important announcement. He did it this evening at the Nairobi time, and he said, henceforth, the National Super Alliance transforms from a political alliance to a national resistance movement, something extremely significant. And right now, pundits are busy trying to understand what that means, because it brings those kind of thoughts and kind of connotations of the national resistance movement in Uganda and other places. Nevertheless, it did explain that they have all intentions to undermine the government that will be formed, if there's a successful government being formed after tomorrow, through methods that are not militant, but would include economic boycotts and perhaps other very, very peaceful methods. And one of the very significant things is Mr. Raila Odinga has called on his supporters not to go out in protest on polling day, but instead stay away, stay at home, pray, but deny Mr. President Uhuru Kenyatta the vote by not going to the polling station to vote.
Wow, Vincent, now has Mr. Kenyatta spoken since these new developments took place?
Mr. Kenyatta was scheduled to speak around 6 p.m. this evening Kenyan time. He hasn't. He may have started speaking as I'm talking to you now, but I haven't seen that. We expected him possibly to first call on the people of Kenya to go out in droves tomorrow and cast their votes and not to be scared of anything, because he has assured them of security. But of course, we also expected to hear how he will react to Mr. Raila Odinga's declaration. It's a declaration he made to consistently fight against this regime. And in fact, he did say that they will ensure there is another election after 90 days. So
Vincent,
we're waiting to see.
Vincent, thank you very much for your reporting. Keep your eyes on the ground. We'll talk to you again tomorrow.
Sure, thank you.
Africa 54 Managing Editor Vincent Makori reporting live via Skype from Nairobi. Now, with more insight into Kenya's political crisis, I'm joined again via Skype from Nairobi by Dr. Korir Sing'oei. Dr. Sing'oei is a legal analyst and advisor for the Intergovernmental Liaison Office in Nairobi. Dr. Korir, a very warm welcome to you to Africa 54. Please give us some sort of legal interpretation from your standpoint on what the court's adjournment means at this point. A rerun tomorrow or no rerun, given all the uncertainty?
Thank you very much. I think first and foremost, it's important to outline that the election scheduled to hold tomorrow is being held pursuant to a decision of the Supreme Court on the 1st of September. Now, following that decision, there has been a number of political and legal developments. I think Makori has outlined the political developments, but in terms of the legal developments, as you know, the courts in Kenya have been a very important arena for contestation over this entire electoral period. And so a number of cases have been filed in court subsequent to the decision of the Supreme Court. One of the cases that was just determined 2 days ago basically related to whether the process by which returning officers across the 290 constituencies was conducted according to the law by IEBC. And the court this morning basically found that there was a slight problem in the way in which they were appointed, because political parties were not given the list of these names within the required 14 days. However, the court said that in the public interest, these officials would remain in office to conduct these specific elections.
Now, Mr.
Secondly,
Sing'oei,
there was also a case.
Mr. Sing'oei, if you can interpret for us, because the Chief Justice did say that has been adjourned. Is this something that is going to be heard again? Does that affect tomorrow's rerun?
There is nothing, legally speaking, that stands between Kenyans and their vote tomorrow. The vote will hold tomorrow. This morning, the Supreme Court was supposed to hear another case filed by 3 voters, basically, again, seeking the postponement of this vote on various grounds. However, our Constitution requires that the quorum for the Supreme Court must be 5 judges. Now, today about 4 of the 7 judges were not present, and therefore the court did not have a quorum and could not hear this matter.
Now, very quickly,
nothing legally speaking.
Very quickly, Mr. Singwei, tell us your take about now NASA's leader, Raila Odinga, moving from NASA to National Resistance Movement. The legal interpretation of this, is this going to be a political party that's going to be registered? What does that mean in 30 seconds?
It's a very unfortunate development. I think it really represents an effort to go outside, Kenya's constitutional parameters, which recognizes political formations around political parties and not nebulous, undefined, indeterminate resistance movements. And so I think if Odinga is going to pursue his aims consistent with the Constitution, I don't think it matters what he calls whatever he is doing, but the moment he arms himself in the manner in which other resistance movements have done, then he's completely outside the Constitution and would not be protected under our law and under our Constitution.
But there will be a rerun tomorrow, all said and done.
Absolutely, absolutely.
All right, thank you so much, Korir Singwei.
Thank you.
Mr. Korir Singwei is a legal advisor and head of the Intergovernmental Liaison Office in Nairobi. Now, the United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres on Tuesday began a 4-day visit to the Central African Republic, visiting with wounded UN peacekeepers and laying a wreath to fallen peacekeepers who served the UN mission there. Guterres was greeted by cheers in Bangui, where he shook hands with people lining the streets. He praised the heroic contribution of peacekeepers protecting civilians in remarks at a ceremony, and visited peacekeepers in the hospital who were wounded in 2 separate attacks in Pombolo a few days ago.
I'm very proud to be your colleague. I'm very proud to serve in the same United Nations where you serve. And I want to tell all of you, Blue Helmets that are here with us, that we count on you to make the UN always more effective serving the people. We are here to serve the people, to sacrifice ourselves for the people we care for. And your example is something that I will always remember. Your sacrifice is something that the UN will always honor.
Now, the political conflict in Central African Republic began in 2002. And joining me here in the studio to discuss the crisis in Central African Republic is VOA reporter Idris Fall. Idris, welcome to Africa 54.
Thank you.
Now, I'm curious to know if there is any impact of the visit of the UN Secretary General in Central African Republic, given that most of the people there don't really welcome the peacekeepers.
Well, it boosts the morale, I would say, because it's his first visit to UN soldiers, peacekeepers. Even I think he went this morning to Bangassou, where 6 Moroccans were killed in May, and that's symbolic. But I think they had been there since 2014. And the killings are going on all the time. And UN peacekeepers, sometimes it may be in a city called Bambari, or in the upper north in another city called Bria, or even in Bangassou, civilians are being killed and killed by hundreds. And as bringing some human rights defenders saying that they wonder what the use of these UN force MINUSCA there. Some are accusing them, if the Muslim soldiers, to be accomplices or supporting those Muslim former rebels.
But you know, they may not support the peacekeepers there, but there are so many rebel factions in that country. Can the country really be able to keep their civilians, away from all these conflicts and all these crises?
Because I think they may have 16 or 17 different armed groups. Some of them are Muslim, others say they support the Christians, and they are fighting among the groups of the former Seleka.
So when you talk to folks down there, what do they propose should be the middle ground here? So if they don't want the peacekeepers from outside, how should they secure the country?
The middle ground had been found because they organize legal election, they choose a president, Faustin Touadéra, they elected a National Assembly, and now since past July, the camp of the president is accusing the camp of the National Assembly of trying to overthrow him. You know, it's very, very complex. It will take time before Central Africa has peace, I'm sure.
Idris, we really hope for the best. My goodness, Africa.
Thank you.
All right. Idris Fall is a VOA reporter with French to Africa service. Now, on a three-nation tour of Africa with stops in Ethiopia, South Sudan, and the Democratic Republic of Congo, the U.S. ambassador to the United Nations, Nikki Haley, visited Gambela in western Ethiopia on Tuesday to get a first-hand look at where nearly 350,000 refugees have flooded across the border from South Sudan since the country spiraled into civil war in 2013. During her visit to the camp, Haley spent time with children in a makeshift school, lending support and encouragement. The war in South Sudan was sparked by a feud between President Salva Kiir and his former deputy Riek Machar. It has plunged parts of the world's youngest nation into famine and forced one-third of the population, some 4 million people, to flee their homes. Ambassador Haley says President Kiir should be held accountable for the tragedies he has caused to people in his country. She also said the refugees are in a dire situation.
I mean, my heart is heavy. You can't look at this group of people and say that anyone deserves this. And the fact that this is a man-made conflict, that one man has done so much harm to so many people, it's heartbreaking. And to see the survival spirit that they've had to endure is unbelievable.
Haley will this week be the most senior member of the U.S. President Donald Trump's administration to visit South Sudan, where she is due to meet with President Kiir. A Niger government official says the body of U.S. Army Sergeant La David Johnson was retrieved later than the bodies of 3 other U.S. troops killed by the militants in Niger on October 4th because he remained on the front line while the others retreated under heavy fire. A high-ranking Niger official and a former Tuareg rebel chief told VOA that Johnson was killed and died at the location where the attack on a U.S.-Nigerian reconnaissance mission began. VOA's Latza Hoke reports.
Johnson's widow has many questions regarding her husband's death near the village of Tongo Tongo in southwestern Niger.
Why it took them 48 hours to find my husband? Why couldn't I see my husband? I don't know what's in that box. It could be empty for all I know.
Some U.S. lawmakers also have questions about the circumstances in which 4 U.S. troops were killed and why it takes so long to get the answers. A top U.S. general said Monday the investigation is ongoing.
We're trying to balance the need to do this quickly with the need to make sure that it's accurate, and I think we will certainly err on the side of accuracy.
Joseph Dunford, chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, said a group of 12 U.S. Green Berets and about 30 Niger troops were attacked in ambush by about 50 militants. The soldiers were returning from a reconnaissance mission and did not expect contact with the militants, he said.
During a firefight, 2 U.S. soldiers were wounded and evacuated by French air to Niamey, and that was consistent with the casualty evacuation plan that was in place for this particular operation. 3 U.S. soldiers who were killed in action were evacuated on the evening of 4 October, and at that time, Sergeant La David Johnson was still missing. On the evening of 6 October, Sergeant Johnson's body was found and subsequently evacuated.
Dunford said that U.S. or French or Nigerian forces remained in the area at all times until Johnson's body was recovered, tacitly denying suggestions that the missing soldier might have been abandoned. VOA learned from a high-ranking official in Niger that Johnson remained on the front line after the others had retreated. Dunford said investigators are looking into why Johnson got separated from the rest of his group and other details of the incident. The U.S. military chief also addressed complaints by lawmakers in both parties directed at the Pentagon and the White House for the scarcity of information regarding the ambush.
If the Congress doesn't believe that they're getting sufficient information, then I need to double my efforts to provide them with information.
No group has claimed responsibility for the ambush near Niger's border with Mali, but U.S. officials say the attack with small arms fire and rocket-propelled grenades was likely carried out by a local group linked to Islamic State. Zlatica Hoke, VOA News, Washington.
We want to know what you think about Africa 54 and the stories we cover. Join the conversation on Facebook. The address is Africa 54. We're also streaming our show live on Facebook. So check us out and share our show with your friends. Still to come, a mobile cinema project catches on in South Africa. Stay with us.
My name's Carla Babb, and I work the Pentagon beat. That access helps me to do better stories. Every day it's my responsibility to collect all of the defense news. It keeps our VOA viewers informed. I get to travel all across the globe. Anything that's defense related and how to protect and keep people safe, that's where I'll go. So it's never a dull moment at the Pentagon. My name is Carla Babb. This is my beat.
In Wednesday's business news, China's Communist Party Congress has given President Xi Jinping 5 more years. Africa 54 business correspondent Joe Malandrino joins us from New York with a look at what this all means for Africa and the world. Jill.
Hi there, good afternoon. So as predicted, Chinese Communist Party Congress gave Xi Jinping a second 5-year term, and it's almost certain now that China is beyond, he should go beyond his new 5-year term. And his intention is to make certain that the party remains the sole governing body in China for decades into the future. Now, Xi has made it his intention that China, the most important country in the world in coming decades, and the expansion will also go geopolitically into areas such as the South China Sea. That will be extended, not diminished. And China's military and economic might shall probably challenge the U.S. dominance at all times and just about everywhere.
Now, Jill, we know that China has done quite a lot in terms of infrastructure in the continent, but what are some of the potential impacts really for the continent?
Well, it's interesting because China's not only a member of the United Nations Security Council, it's also the world's most populous country, but more importantly, it's the world's second largest economy. It is Africa's biggest trade partner, investment and major infrastructure financing partner. And President Xi at the 2015 Forum on China-Africa Cooperation, remember that he announced $60 billion to assist in the continent's development the following 3 years. Now, this program, which has seen the development of major connectivity infrastructure in the past couple of years, like rail lines, ports, hydro dams, roads, and stadia in Western East Africa, ends this year. And these are several projects that we have spoken out on the show. But it is expected that this will continue into the future. Apart from bilateral deals that have seen China undertake major infrastructure projects in most African nations, the Chinese are also helping to construct industrial parks for massive absorption of the continent's younger unemployed population. Now, this is the case with Kenya, Ethiopia, and most recently Congo, where the Chinese are building 2 industrial parks. Another major plant is due to commence in eastern Nigeria as well.
Oh, Jill, thank you so much for your reporting.
Thank you.
Africa 54 business correspondent Joe Malandrino reporting live from New York. It's time now for a short break. Still to come on Africa 54. A pop-up cinema comes to a South African township. We'll be right back.
If you've just joined us, I'm Mariama Diallo, and here is a quick recap of today's headlines.
In Kenya, the Supreme Court announces that due to lack of judges, it will not hear a case to delay the repeat presidential election, so it will proceed as planned. We stay in Kenya, where opposition leader Raila Odinga tells supporters that NASA will be gathering all the country's progressive forces so that free, fair and credible elections can be organized within 90 days. In Niger, representatives from the 15-nation organization ECOWAS announced that plans to establish a single currency among their countries by 2020 have failed.
That's all for today. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.
Welcome back to Africa 54. Here's what's trending. Children wait patiently outside a play school in Khayelitsha, Cape Town's largest township. Inside, Bushe Sitela is setting up equipment to show them a film. He started a mobile cinema project in 2015 to do something positive for his community by offering safe entertainment and education for the young and old. Sitela uses a solar-powered box which combines the solar panels, speakers, projector, and batteries. He shows different genres depending on his audience, ranging from dramas, comedies, and action movies, among others. He says he wants to expand the project to reach townships across the country. Next up, the introduction of Wi-Fi hotspots in Cuban public spaces 2 years ago has transformed the communist-run island that has been mostly offline. Nearly half the population of 11 million connected at least once last year. That has whet Cubans' appetite for better and cheaper access to the internet. Given the relative expense of connecting to the internet, Cubans use it mostly to stay in touch with relatives and friends. Although prices have dropped, the $1.50 hourly tariff represents a 5% of the average monthly state salary of $30. And finally, Halloween isn't just for humans. Dressing up and celebrating the spooky day is big business in the United States, with stores reporting steady growth over the past decade. The National Retail Federation says 72% of adults in America will celebrate Halloween this year compared to 59% in 2007. Of those, 16% are expected to dress up their pets. This year, the hottest animal costumes include pumpkins, hot dogs, pirates, and bumblebees, with top choices propelled by, of course, social media. And that's what's trending today. And that's our show for today. Be sure to watch Africa 54 on our website at voaafrica.com. For more news, tune in to VOA's evening radio show, Africa News Tonight, at 1800 UTC, and in the mornings to Daybreak Africa, between 0300 and 0600 UTC, Monday through Friday. Thanks for watching, and good night from Washington.
Welcome to English in a Minute. Most people enjoy listening to music. But is this expression actually about songs and tunes?
Music to my ears.
Jonathan, I cannot believe we have to work over the weekend.
Did you not hear the news? The meeting for the project got canceled. No work this weekend after all.
Awesome! That is music to